See, this is the trouble. While those rebates end for taxpayers and we're all going to be hit by higher prices still, the rebates are still going, or the subsidies are still going into heavy industry like smelters and the like. I'm not complaining about that. They need it. Otherwise, they'll shut down. But it just comes back to this fundamental problem the government's not addressing. That is, you actually have to lower the price or the cost of the electricity you produce. You can't just have endless subsidies for renewables and then to get rid of coal and then to bring coal back in or extend it and then to keep heavy industry going. The system has got to be self-sustaining.
That's exactly right. And so the collective delusion, I think, is hopefully starting to fall apart, but it's been really remarkable. And I just want to highlight once again the enormous bait and switch that's taken place in our energy planning institutions. Because 5 years or so ago, there were some documents produced by the CSIRO that said we'd be able to have very low cost electricity. With all the firming, all the transmission added in, they still said it'd be around $70 a megawatt hour. That has proved absolutely horrendously false. But in that time, they've now switched their objective to, instead of saying we're going to assess the cost of the overall system, they locked in that goal that it has to be all renewables, that it has to be 82% and eventually almost 100%. They locked that in and now said, are we doing the cheapest path to get to the same destination? So they're now just saying, are we on the cheapest path to get to this same destination, and no longer telling us the honest answer about whether this destination is actually a low-cost energy system. And the reality is very, very clear to anyone who's honest about the system is that the amount of support it needs, it's an extremely high-cost system.
It is such a con. That's such a detailed explanation, but it is such a con. And this is so important for people to understand. We had a national electricity market set up many, many years ago, and the aim of that was to make sure we had the most efficient, the most cost-effective energy sent around the eastern seaboard and South Australia to underpin the economy. And instead of now being driven to supply the cheapest, most reliable energy, it's actually being used as a tool to reduce emissions rather than to supply the energy that we need. Now, the draft integrated plan for 2026 is being released tomorrow with a lot of these organisations feeding into it. Do you expect there's going to be any reckoning in there, any admission that they're on the wrong track?
Look, I don't, because they've already told us, because the inputs and assumptions have been released some time ago. They've told us that, again, they're going to treat all government policy as gospel. They'll just say that it has been accepted. It was going to model that policy being successful. And I hope that we start to see the glimmers of the consequence of taking such an uncritical acceptance that any political fantasy can translate to reality, because I think there will be some cracks showing, particularly as Queensland has now said they're not going to pursue the same targets for their renewable energy target. There could be some inconsistencies. Also, we're that much closer now to 2030, and they've still got the same crazy 82% target there when the pace of new renewables has actually slowed down massively. So there will be a completely fanciful 4-year surge that will just look totally implausible at the start of that plan. So I hope that we now start to realise that we've produced a plan that is so beholden to unrealistic politicians' targets that it now serves as a very, very poor guide to the serious people that actually have to run the grid and make investments about the energy system.
Thanks for joining us again, Aidan. Aidan Morrison there from the Centre for Independent Studies. It is a cluster mess.